guess I'd like to direct this at Dr. Williams. I am a conference organizer. I have no backgrounds at all. I don't do research, and so I have really no knowledge of this. But I have come to the conclusion, or I'm very distrustful of industries, whether we're talking about the soda industry, the candy industry, the beer industry, the fossil fuel industry. I feel like they're trying to sell me, and they'll say whatever they have to do to make the sale. I sort of feel the same exact way about the pharmaceutical industry. So when they say we have a new drug and it works, I kind of feel, I read Ben Goldacre's book called Bad Pharma, and they convinced me that every clinical trial, not every, clinical trials, that there's so many opportunities for the pharmaceutical industry to have a way to influence it, to somehow influence or to stop studies or delete studies, and the end result that when the doctors get these studies, they're studies that were so influenced and affected by the pharmaceutical industry that even if a doctor says, look, we have 3 great studies, maybe there were 5 that they kicked out and never showed. So I kind of feel like, how do I really believe any doctor or anyone or any doctor who says, look, we have the studies, if the studies themselves I don't trust? So I kind of feel like, I don't know, even if you say that the statin studies show that statins work, I'm thinking, who ran those studies? Who controlled them? Who influenced them? So how do we decide whether I should listen when a doctor or a smart person says the studies show that the drug is good or statins are good?
That really has been a concern, and there are a lot of financial motivations. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about the device industry or the food industry. It doesn't really matter. And that kind of relationships with industry, the influence of industry on scientific literature has been deep. It's been there for a long time. But there's no question that we have progressed. And so but let me ask you, before I give you the overall answer, let me answer that one particular question. How do you know that statins work? Because it's breaking the Medicare trust fund. People are not well and they're not dead. Okay? And that, if you're the insurer, is putting you in deep trouble. Okay? So there's no question that statins save lives, but it's not stopping, it's stopping progression of disease, but it's not curing people. So they're still seeking health care. Now, one of the things that I mentioned earlier was clinicaltrials.gov. That really is important because there have been instances, I'll try really hard not to say the name of the drug, where a major trial, everyone knew the trial was going on, the trial ended, and then there was no results. And no one was talking about it. So this was over 10 years ago, I was sort of the incoming co-chair of the annual scientific sessions, and somebody on our committee said, why don't we tell that company that they have to present it at our meeting? We contacted them, they did, and yeah, it was a huge negative for their particular drug. And but when you call them on a carpet, they really did go ahead and publish the results. And that led to a change in the direction of how cholesterol drugs were actually being treated. And so physicians, societies, American Medical Association, we can all, the Food and Drug Administration, we can all hold each other accountable to try to help with the issue of pharmaceutical industry relationships that would taint the science to some degree. Now, being able to register all the drugs and all the trials, I think has helped a lot. So we do get negative trials. They may not get the biggest publication, but at least you know from that website that something was done in that particular area. So my biggest issue with them is probably not the level of science, because imagine this, imagine you're a drug company and you put out a drug that doesn't work or it's toxic, and you've somehow gotten in front of the FDA and you've gotten it through on data that's fake. There is a big truth that's about to happen. That is, your drug will be released and it will be prescribed. And then you will have, in my career, there's a handful of drugs, Cerevistatin, Celacrine, drugs that had to be withdrawn. And those withdrawals are very costly. Your shareholders, your CEOs, all of them are quite upset because it's going to cost that company a lot of money. So you have a big, the fact that the drug is going to be widely distributed is going to tell you that'll hold people accountable because the company will be sued for having, you see them on television. This is one of the most litigious societies ever, if not the most. You see them on television all the time. Did you bleed on this particular drug? Well, it doesn't matter that drug is half the bleeding of what we used to use. You're still going to get sued, even though it's better. The mesh for, I see that one all the time, the mesh for hernia repair. Anytime there's a recall, there's going to be a lawsuit. And so that unfortunately holds people and companies accountable as well. So if I have a problem with the pharmaceutical industry, it really isn't the accuracy of the trials, because they will be held accountable ultimately for that. It's the pricing. That, I know that's a little off topic, but I think it's important because we are talking about trying to maintain our Medicare system and decrease healthcare costs. And pharmaceutical costs are a major issue. And if you look around the planet, there are only 2 countries, last time I looked, that don't have cost constraints, 2 developed countries, and that's the United States and New Zealand. New Zealand doesn't have this kind of an issue. They're very similar to Australia, where there are price controls. And I actually personally have talked to the president of Pharma, this many years ago, and said, why can't we rein in these costs? And the answer came back that if we rein in the costs, we will have to stop research and development. And so I said, so you're saying that that in Germany and France they can pay 30 to 50% of what we're paying, and the United States population has to bear the cost of R&D for all the drugs in the world? And there was a little pause, and he said, yes. I don't know how to get around that. How do you make it more? How do you make it easier to have drug development? Sometimes it takes 30 years and billions of dollars, and then they want to come back with a drug that costs $80,000. Well, if you're Harvoni and you stop the progression of hepatitis C, and you cure it instead of people dying, maybe that's worth $80,000. So it's a difficult area. I know that it's been a big political issue recently. Having Medicare be able to negotiate prices of drugs, I think, is something that many of us physicians would be in favor of for the benefit of patients, for compliance with and stopping disease. We're not there yet.
Maybe can I just add one more thing, is that I think we've just missed something, though, that's important. And that is, we're here to talk about lifestyle medicine and trying to avoid the use of medicinal substances, which don't get to remove the cause of the problem. And that we're talking about diseases that are caused by what people eat. And drugs enable people psychologically to think it's okay to keep eating the same diet that caused the problem to begin with. Therefore, it accelerates and promotes the progression of their illness, because people think because their glucose looks okay, they can still be overweight and eat burgers and go to fast food restaurants and drink soda. And because their blood pressure is okay, it's okay to eat French fries and potato chips. And because their high blood pressure is okay. In other words, without the drugs will be picking you up, smashing your head against the wall and saying, I want to see you next week, dropping 5 pounds, eating just vegetables, staying off salt, and I'll see you next week after you're walking an hour each morning and see if you look better. But now we give them a drug, and the person goes right out to McDonald's and have milkshakes and French fries, and they think they're okay.
I couldn't agree with Joel more. It's just so blatant. It's a hard one.